who started out probably barefoot with ragged little clothes on a one-speed bicycle taxi. You know, a little upholstery over the bike carrier in the back, or maybe they'd carry 200 pounds of bananas or 200 pounds of banana beer or something. So these little kids sweating and working on these little single-speed bikes, and imagine just, you know, kind of time-lapsing, and you've got these guys now with the most latest, you know, clothing and bicycle equipment, and that kind of transformation that happened from these simple little peasant kids to riding in the Olympics, in many ways has been Rwanda's journey over the last 19 years now, nearly. April will make it 19 years since the genocide started. And what I'm going to share with you guys is going to be some of our story from when we lived there in '94, but I always want to start out with kind of Rwanda today, especially since I was just there last month and then this last summer with Gabe and also with some teachers, because I don't want to perpetuate this idea that Rwanda equals genocide. Rwanda equals genocide. There's so much more to Rwanda than that horrible time. And that horrible time, no, never to be forgotten, really important to learn about so we can appreciate after that what has gone on. But this was just, one of the streets a couple weeks ago took the picture, and I meant to get Gabe's student group picture, and Gabe, I destroyed my iPhoto library. Anyway, these are some teachers and some giraffe we got really acquainted with. But no, this last month, these kids, they're Bus State Theater kids. So I'm pretty excited to be in this gorgeous theater too, because these students, their professor, the guy with the orangish shirt, Drew is his name too. We got another Drew around here. He's real passionate about theater and changing the world. And he says, theater is about the courage to speak. And if you've got the courage to speak and then the skills, then you better have something to say. And so these students, after visiting memorial sites, I mean, one of the hardest ones, I'm sure, I start to even get a lump in my throat when I think about it, because I remember going there with Gabe and the other students, and I've been there twice now with college students, and they've, in a very crude way, they've preserved bodies with lime. And it's a very controversial memorial site, because as one college student said, you know, it stank and it was gross, and that's not the problem. The problem is that the people were beautiful, lovely people. They weren't stinky, gross people. And she was bothered by this memory of these innocent, fun-loving, joyful people now with skin all shriveled around their bones, and you could still see little patches of hair. And man, one young lady who works in the government today in Rwanda, it's probably about 14 years ago, they used to have some clothes, but it's like I said, very primitive preserving, and she was just so moved by this little girl's dress that looked like hers that it changed her whole life, that one moment. So while it's a controversy, and she's now involved in service, in the kind of service that really is for the people, not for yourself. You know, as we were talking about governments earlier today in some classes, the whole idea of a good government and bad government, for me, boils down to, is it all about me or is it about somebody else? And so this memorial, it can have all kinds of effects on people, understandably, because it's very different than even seeing bones. And bones are very hard, and especially if they're in a glass case. This is just on a table in a classroom, and you're smelling it and you're seeing it, and you're seeing the little children and the marks in their skulls. And after 2 weeks of not just looking at memorials, but seeing beautiful stuff, there's this guy, let me just jump back out of this thing over here. I've been rebuilding, like I said, my library. This guy we went to visit there, he's like the prime example of what any kind of wonderful local development could be. He's got agriculture, what do you call it? Sample gardens? Not a sample garden, what do you call it? Like an example garden. Yeah, anyway, it's just that, a sample garden, example garden, I don't know. He's got demonstration gardens on all the hills around here. That guy's got a basin full of strawberries heading down to the juice factory. He's just adding value to his community. All the strawberry plants you want, all the passion fruit plants, all the pineapple, and then down there he's built this school, and we could spend actually our whole time today. He's introducing, every year he wants a new product line. You know, he's introducing wine now, and the macadamia nuts are doing great, and he built the school for even a preschool. I mean, in a rural setting where you wouldn't expect a preschool, and it's free to the community because this man is about investing in his community. These aren't U.S., British, you know, Swedish dollars, money funds. This is from locally generated funds. Bringing in these 40-liter-a-day cows, you know, that give milk to mix with the Rwandan 2-liter-a-day cow, and you can get a stud to service your cow for $3. And it's just simple little things, but making a big difference. And the fun thing, if you guys want to read about Rwanda, a very interesting book, and every book has its biases. This one obviously does too. But it was this book called Land of a Thousand Hills, The Rebuilding of a Nation, a Man Who Dreamed It, and talking about playing classical music to pigs, that actually introduced me to this guy. He says they're more calm, especially at feeding time when I play music. And they eat less, but they still gain weight. And I mean, he's an innovator of all kinds, a vertical garden instead of a horizontal garden. And I mean, you know, one out in his donut and bakery and all. He's got a hot sauce factory that'll burn the smokestack off of anybody. But so we're not just looking at the harshness of the Rwanda story and the genocide. We're looking at some of its wonderful successes. And we also traveled, these theater guys were doing plays for government officials, for students. This was a deaf school that we visited, and a refugee camp. I'm walking around this refugee camp with 3 20-year-olds. They've been at the camp since they were 6. They're from the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They had to flee for their lives 14 years ago. There's more than 20,000 people in this camp, and they just shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be there. Their country should not be shredded the way it is. Their government should not be allowed to continue to exploit the people, and we shouldn't continue to give money to governments this way. And anyway, I won't go off on all of that, but it's a mixture. You can imagine for these theater students now, after 2 weeks last month, they're in a class this semester at Buff State writing a play. A theater ensemble class, writing a play based on their experience in Rwanda. And you'll be able to see it online. Last year we did the same thing, first time with a group of theater students, and their play is already online. And if you guys want to follow any of this stuff up, and I know really fast and stuff, just shoot me a message on Facebook. If you World Outside My Shoes, or if you find Carl Wilkens, I'm not on the internet right now, so I don't know whose message this was to me. But if you type in World Outside My Shoes, no point clicking on it since I'm not online, but you'll see my wife and I. And I'll put links there. You'll find links as you go farther down to learn more about the Congo, more about all these things going on. Let me just introduce you to this group, and then we'll jump back to 1994. A friend of mine has had a dance company, Rebecca Davis in Philadelphia, but she got involved with wanting to end genocide. So she's now started 3 schools around the world, one in Rwanda, one in West Africa, one in Bosnia, and they're targeted for street kids. You guys want to do dance classes? And they're like, yeah, and so 2 days a week you're in dance classes, 3 days a week you're in math, English, and technology classes. And I'm just going to play this short little one piece. You guys got me hooked up with sound. Thank you so much. Do we have some sound coming? Okay, I can use mine. No worry. Now the instructor said this is a routine the kids created themselves. So I'm sorry if I'm rushing kind of fast here. These kids they'd be living in dumpsters if they had dumpsters. I mean, they're living on the streets. They now are finding a new identity, it's like they're kind of redoing a childhood that the streets stole from them. So as you see them kind of this is their own, anyway, you can figure that out, their own creation. I always have a hard time stopping this video because I want to watch the whole thing. There's something about these guys. Next time you read something about Rwanda and they use this phrase, Tutsi-dominated government, think about these kids. Think about that refugee camp. Rwanda is a safe place for the people of the Congo. A place that was a place of death for hundreds of thousands of people today is a safe haven. And this idea of a Tutsi-dominated government, there are so many people who had Hutu, the majority group, Hutu background, that are in the government making decisions right from the grassroots level right up to the top levels of government. You know, I'm just begging people, please take off your ethnic glasses and look at Rwanda with some other glasses, because you'll see some incredible progress. One of the 9th fastest actually growing economy in the world right now. Okay, this is, I don't know if I should do this or not. I don't motorcycle taxis are not safe, so I tell people not to ride on them, and here I am riding on it. I'm late for an appointment, as if that makes it okay, but I've got my new best friend here, Mr. GoPro, and so wherever I go these days, walking around Penn Station, I had it hooked to my backpack the other day. But I just want I dare you to find a piece of trash. It's the cleanest city you'd ever set foot in. It's beautiful, as you can see, the green, even the walls. You stop right here and you see this guy right here at the corner with the green jacket. There is a large police presence and military presence, but for the people of the country, for so many, that means safety. That's why Rwanda has one of the lowest crime rates. If you're coming from a country where the government was killing you, your family members, your teachers, your dentist, your grandmother, and they say, oh, we're a new government? Sorry, I'm not going to trust any government. So this whole idea, what Rwanda is working on, is two things. They're saying we've got to be accountable to the people, and we've got to be transparent. Those are the two biggest things. So I had a guy in a green jacket, not with Gabe, but I think the summer before, stop me because I was foolishly driving and talking on my cell phone at the same time. And he stopped me, and he was very polite and kind, and he actually didn't even give me a ticket, which was very nice of him. But if you thought, like in many developing countries, a policeman stops you and all they want is money, no, not in Rwanda. In fact, if you try to slip them money, you'll be in a whole lot more trouble than if you get a traffic ticket, believe me. And that's so different from many, many other neighboring countries. And so the whole idea of the government being there for the safety and to serve the people is something that I could give you a ton of examples. Let me just, I got to pull the sack over this thing. I scratched the lens on the case, and anyway, if any of you know GoPro, so I'm going to figure that out. I was just on my way up here to the Millbrook Hotel. Any of you who've seen the movie Hotel Rwanda, this is the hotel that movie Hotel Rwanda is based on. And it's interesting, as it's obviously been up and running for years, and it's just beautiful. But for me, as I was walking through this parking lot just a few weeks ago, I've got all the memories of the genocide coming back to me, because I visited this hotel 3 or 4 times a week during the genocide. It was basically unlike what the movie portrayed, it was basically under the protection of the United Nations. And while there were 2,500 UN soldiers who were in the country when the plane was shot down, the 2,500 soldiers could have stopped the genocide, but we made the decision, along with other countries at the UN, to take those soldiers out. It was good we had sent soldiers. We had had 3 years of war. There was now going to be a new government, and the UN would kind of help that happen. provide security. They patrolled the streets. I'm still looking to see if my camera's on. I'm going to pause it here in just a second because I have a picture, a little bit of news footage from 1994 that I want to play for you. You can see we're coming up to the entrance, you know, where the person meets you for your luggage and all that stuff. Just pause it right there. There were people, the soldiers, UN soldiers were patrolling the streets in groups of 7 or 8. So when you saw them before the genocide, before the plane is shot down, when you saw them, you just kind of felt, okay, they're here, it's going to be okay. There's tension mounting. We could see signs. Today we don't have time to get into all the details of the signs of the genocide that were coming, but we could tell. I sent a fax to the church headquarters. I was working with building schools, basically, with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I sent a fax to their headquarters saying, we're sitting on a keg of dynamite. I've been meeting at the embassy regularly with the ambassador. I'm communicating to the other group of Americans I was responsible for. We've got an evacuation plan in place. We've got assembly points, you know, like you're going to meet at Target or you're going to meet at Wilson High School or whatever. And then from there we'll evacuate. We had all that ready, but we hoped that we wouldn't have to because we hoped this new government would come in and all the tension would be dispelled, released by this new government. But there's extremists from the old government who said, no, 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 to share power is worse than defeat. Kind of like somebody who, when the game is going wrong, they knock all the characters off the game board because, no, it's all about me and us holding on to power. And so in any case, we vote to take the soldiers out. And what that means is that people who didn't flee the city when they heard about truckloads full of machetes, people who didn't flee the city when they heard the hate radio, they heard even comedians with their hate message because they said, it's going to be okay, the UN is here. We don't have to run, the UN is here. So they're there right up until the point of those who planned the genocide, the politicians who were afraid of losing power. Don't fall into the easy trap that some people try to just say, oh, Hutus hated Tutsis for years, killed each other, and finally a genocide. I mean, number one, there's nothing spontaneous about genocide. It is hard to pull off a genocide. But number two, if they hated each other so much, why'd they marry each other so much? Hutus were like 85%, Tutsis like 12%, according to ID cards. But in reality, they were married. And by the thousands. It was just not unusual at all. So you really can't build a case for this group hating that group and a genocide. No, it's people in political power who want to hang on to power and need to combine a force, have a strong enough group to stay in power and construct an enemy. And that's a huge part of the lessons coming out of, I got something I want to tell you about that in a minute, but huge part of the lessons coming out of the Rwanda genocide is this whole idea that enemies are not born. You can't, no such thing. You cannot convince. Those little boys frog hopping across the stage, I don't care what country they're born into, they're little boys frog hopping. There's no such thing as born enemies. So what we do is we construct enemies. And if we believe that enemies are constructed, then we should be able to what? No, I know. Destruct is what our presidential candidates in their debate said. We have to destroy our enemies, you know, but no. Deconstruct. And is that even? No, it's not. Deconstruct. And how? 2 tools, guys. These are so incredibly powerful, and yet I'm like, I hope they're not disappointed because they're so simple. But the power of stories and the power of service to deconstruct an enemy. What's up with the stories? The stories are hopefully inspiring us to act, to do some form of service. And the service is empowering the stories. I don't care what you say if you don't do anything. So this powerful cycle, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize anything, but whether it's your neighbor's dog pooping in your yard or whether it's something as complex as Syria, I think these 2 tools can be applied. in terms of learning the story, learning the backstory. What's really going on? When I was in Jordan in December, and I'm riding in shared taxis, and we're going to a Syrian refugee camp. And if you guys want to walk through a Syrian refugee camp with me and my best friend, Mr. GoPro, come on the Facebook page, and you'll see about 4 videos there, just walking through the streets of Amman, going down, getting in the shared taxis, and then riding up to the camp with Jordan. Actually, a kid named Jordan in Jordan. He's one of my he's a sophomore at UC Long Beach. When he graduated from high school, he skipped the senior party that weekend because he was on a plane in LA going to South Sudan. He had to go find out what he could do in South Sudan, and he raised $3,500 and was distributing like 525 mosquito nets to women who were pregnant or had little babies. He had made a friend, a lost boy of Sudan, these guys who, fled their country at 1,000 miles. He had made a friend and traveled there together, and his friend was doing an MPH, so I think that's why he was doing the mosquito nets, the health issue. But Jordan, every time he hears something, he's studying Arabic at UC Long Beach, and his Arabic teacher is Syrian. And she's talking about her family and what's going on in Syria. And Jordan's like, what do we got? We got to do something. And so Jordan on his own, he's on the internet, can't find a program with UC Long Beach. And so he finds another program to study Arabic in Amman. And he goes to the dean there at UC Long Beach and he says, look, Dean, I want to go over there. I want to study Arabic, but I got to get into the camps. And the dean at UC Long Beach is smart enough to say, go, Jordan, we'll give you credit. Absolutely. Give us some letters. What's the school? And so I'm there because Jordan invited me. First, he invited me to his high school 3 years ago. After he saw Ghost of Rwanda, like Gabe, he invited me to his school, and now he invites me to Jordan, and I'm walking through the camps with him. So you can meet him in that place. Jordan was there learning the stories. As he learned the stories of the families, mostly women and children in the camps, he's like, okay, how can we partner? What's the action? What's the service? And for Jordan, it was to improve their housing from these tents in the bitter cold winter to like box houses that the UN is trying to bring in. So in any case, stories in service are for me the way we deconstruct an enemy. And the part I am like racing against the clock and not winning. This little movie clip, I won't even play the whole 2 minutes of it, is from French television. You can see the 19th of, some of you who speak French. Sorry, but for the rest of us, I'm going to mute them. I mean, well, I kind of understand French too, but. So during the genocide, the footage is coming out. The rest of the world is seeing what's happening. There's, it depends how much footage is played depending on what we demand in our media appetites. But in any case, the rest of the world's seeing what's happening. And there's a French diplomat going there in the middle of the genocide. And here he is at this hotel. I'm walking through the parking lot of right there. I'll pause. You see the overhang, this awning that I'm talking about right there? Instead of a shiny car under the awning, you can see the UN armored personnel under the awning. That's just one example, visual example of how the UN, a few soldiers, maybe just a dozen at the airport, at the hotel, sometimes only 4 were protecting the lives of thousands of people. But in any case, I wanted you to not just see that from that time, but I wanted you to see this is kind of strange thing. That's the Frenchman, and these are some of the orphans. He's kind of doing I don't know, maybe it's a goodwill visit in the middle of genocide. Mortars are falling this day. People are being killed this day. And anyway, right up there, those are my barrels. Guys, it might be like, what's he attached to his barrels? The one orphanage that I was working with especially had fresh little graves in the parking lot when I first arrived. They weren't from little ones who were killed by machetes or by mortars and stuff. They were little ones who were dying from diarrhea. All they needed was water to live. So these barrels were a huge part. And what I grabbed out of the suitcase there, and what I brought, if you guys are interested, during the genocide, about the second week, and I'll introduce you to my wife and children in a minute, and why Teresa and I decided that I would stay. I'll try my best to explain that. But about the second week, as this thing was going on and on, finally I kind of came to the point of saying I might not I might not survive to see my wife and children. So I started to talk on a cassette tape, telling them what was happening. And each time I filled a tape, I would write, my address, Katie Lane, Spokane, Washington, 99223, hoping that if I was killed and the house was trashed, somebody might see that, see the address on that cassette tape, and send it to its intended destination. And obviously I wasn't killed, and house wasn't trashed. And by the time the genocide was over, I had 9 cassette tapes. I went in a shoebox for about 16 years. And finally, last year and a half ago, I finished this little 170-page book. What's exciting for me about this, there's several things, but one is that the stories here aren't me trying to, now how did that happen 17, 16 years ago? No, the stories in here are told the day they happen. The stories are recorded the day they happen or a week after they happen. And if you guys, because we obviously don't have time to get into the different stories, like the stories of the little kids who helped me clean those barrels while snipers were shooting at us, or the stories of the orphanage that I was getting to and stuff like that. If you'd like to, I have books here. You guys are welcome to them. We ask a donation of like $10, but if you don't have money with you, that's not the issue. You can take an envelope and send it, or you can wait to graduate from college and make a $100 donation. I always kind of make that joke. It sort of works. But the thing is, if you want to read the stories, I want you to empty my suitcase. And so if you want to take those stories and understand why those barrels, I get so excited about those barrels, or read about this guy with long hair. I wish I wrote more, but I didn't have, right here with his long hair and beard, the diplomat's hugging him right now. With long hair and beards, the kids called him Jesus. He was in a home, a Frenchman in a home with about 12 or 14 orphans. And when all the other foreigners were leaving, Mark said, no, je ne quitte pas. He says, I'm not leaving. And Mark stayed, and his house took a bomb. The house became unlivable. He moved to the basement of this church where this footage is. His 14 became 140, over 200 kids by the time the genocide was over. And for those of you who are studying French and you'd like to read, and is there a French teacher here with us? Not right now, but there's some French students I know. If you'd ask your teacher to look for this book, it's in French. I'm not even exactly sure the title. It's We Couldn't Save Them All. The guy's name is Mark Vader. I haven't read the book because while I sort of speak French, I'm really slow at reading it. But in any case, let's go ahead. Oh, okay. And that's me. I know it's blurry. But I was leaving that hotel one day and CNN was there, and a reporter came after me, and I didn't really want to talk to reporters because I was trying to keep a very low profile. I didn't want to be labeled as the guy trying to save Tutsis in Rwanda. I was a humanitarian trying to help people in need. But in any case, there's another chapter about little baby and biscuits, because that baby in my arms, I saw her last summer. She just graduated from high school at the top of her class. Her mom and dad were killed, and her aunt was killed. I can't remember if it was her mom or her aunt. The nun who gave her to me said that it was her mom or her aunt. She was on her back when a bomb landed and took the life. The mom's or the aunt's body shielded her, and she had just this little scar over her eyebrow. But anyway, that's the little baby in that chapter about biscuits and babies, which I won't go into. Okay, now give me a time check. We are pretty much out of time. All right. Well, there it goes for the question and answer time, guys. Let me leave this word with you, and then if you want to take some books, please take a book along with you. The idea so many times is who's responsible? Who's responsible to intervene? Who's responsible in Syria? Who's responsible in the Congo and stuff? Take that word responsible, cut it in half, flip it over, and take this. Ask that question. When somebody's broke down on the side of the road, it's like, who's responsible to help them? No, ask, do I have the ability to respond? And I think that changes the whole conversation. And the ability to respond is largely based on knowing the stories. So, a lot of people want to go out and help, but we don't learn what we need to, the background, so we actually make it worse when we're trying to help. But that ability to respond is something that has really changed the way I think and approach things, and I hope it makes a little difference. Thanks, guys, for coming. And thank you, Gabe, for making this happen. And I hope we can meet sometime on Facebook or something like that.